So guys, today I'm doing a video on Spider-Man Miles Morales with the Steam Deck.
Not yet. Still
We'll be starting off with 800p on the lowest settings. Let's jump into it. Let's continue.
As long as the
Now we finally have an upgrade where we can see the screen and we can see the Steam Deck itself. So hopefully this is better, we can see the quality differences and we can see the performance much better since it's a screen recording. This was a bit difficult to set up since the Steam Deck disables the internal screen once you have it plugged in. But I managed to get a workaround going. Now we've got both running at the same time. Alright, so far we're sitting in the mid to high 30s and jumping up into the low to mid 40s as well occasionally, which is quite good. The game is stuttering a little bit here and there. We had a couple of freezes as well. I am running this game on the internal SSD of the Steam Deck, not running this off an SD card or an external SSD. GPU is pulling around 8 to 9 watts, CPU is pulling around 3 to 4 watts, which is quite alright. And yeah, looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and enable FSR though, since that's enabled by default as well, and I've disabled it right here. Alright, FSR set to quality now, which is the highest preset for FSR. I'm going to apply this real quick, and let's see how this looks. Alright, it's a slight downgrade in terms of the quality of the image, but so far it is pretty good. The screen recording, the quality will look far worse than what you see on the Steam Deck since it's a smaller screen. Keep going. FPS is sitting in the low to mid 40s now. A lot more comfortably compared to what we had before at native, where we were falling down into the mid to high 30s as well. GPU is pulling around 7 watts now instead of 9 to 10 watts at native, and CPU is pulling around 5 to 6 watts, so getting a bit more power out of that as well. Getting a couple of stutters here and there when I'm going super quick. Seems to be CPU bound. I'm gonna get down on the ground and see how this looks. 50 FPS on the ground, almost 60 occasionally. But this might be a 40 FPS cap right here, because I haven't seen it fall below 40 yet. It's been a consistent 40 pretty much the whole time. Alright, now with the balanced FSR mode, let's go ahead and see how this looks. It's definitely a bigger downgrade when we're moving. As I pan the camera, you can see quality falls off a little bit, but playing normally doesn't look too bad at all. We're getting a bit of blurriness here when I'm moving quickly, but for the most part this is not that bad. And FPS is sitting in the mid 40s now consistently. We haven't fallen to the low 40s yet. Getting very close to the 50s. Gonna look for any stuttering right now, see if it's freezing at all. Stuttering occasionally, it's very rare so far, but it's still definitely happening. If you cap the FSR 30, you most likely avoid all this. I'll try that out as well at the end of the video. But with an on-cap frame rate, you are getting some stuttering for sure. And for graphics, I'm going to push it up to the low settings now. Gonna scroll down real quick. There we go. And let's jump into it. No FSR, low settings. This game does look pretty fantastic running at native, I gotta say. I would go with a 30 FPS cap at native compared to running it with FSR. For portable play, we need FSR for sure. We wouldn't get a choice there, but FPS is sitting in the mid 30s on average and jumping up into the low 40s. Lowest I've seen it hit is around 32 FPS. There we go, we just hit it there as well. But on average, you're going to be sitting around 35 to 36 FPS. Game looks fantastic on the Steam Deck, I've got to say. But on low settings, it looks pretty great. I'll probably avoid playing at very low settings. I think there's a pretty decent jump in terms of quality at low settings compared to very low. It just looks better. And I think ideally for optimized settings, I'm going to go with medium, so medium to low settings, just to get the best looking game out of it. But yeah, it's looking pretty good, running pretty great as well. I'm going to go ahead and pause it now. And the quality preset with FSR, you are losing a bit of sharpness for sure, coming from native, but this isn't that bad after all. So on average, we were sitting around 35 to 36 FPS at native low settings. And now we're sitting in the 40s, the low to mid 40s, pretty fantastic, I gotta say. This game can definitely go with the 40 FPS cap if I was gonna guess. You will occasionally dip down into the high 30s, yeah, but for the most part you can hold 40 FPS. For portable play, I think a 30 FPS cap is a must, but if you're going to be plugged in, you've got a portable power bank, then you can go ahead and use 40 FPS. With the uncapped frame rate, we're going to be pulling around 28 watts of power, which will leave us around with an hour and a half battery life. Just keep that in mind. And we're going to keep pushing it up to the medium preset now. So let's see how this runs. I think at this one we're going to fall down into the 20s occasionally, but a 30 FPS average might be doable. The game does look amazing at native, I gotta say. It's actually a pretty decent increase in terms of quality and sharpness when you jump off from using FSR to running at native medium settings. And FPS is sitting in the low to mid 30s and jumping up into the low 40s, but we did hit 31 FPS, so that's kind of worrying. We might fall down into the 20s in those heavier scenes, so keep that in mind. Ooh, that was very laggy trying to leak the mission area. But for the most part, the stuttering has gone away. It seems like it's not feeling so bad. We had a pretty big freeze up when we were leaving the mission area, but other than that, this is pretty great. This game is verified, so I would expect it to run at least decently well. Alright, now with FSR set to quality, with the performance, I think we're still going to be sitting in the 30s on average, but we might jump up into the 40s more often. It's all personal preference at the end of the day. If you like the softer look, then FSR is a win-win for you. But for me personally, I definitely do like the sharper look of running without FSR. Yeah, FPS is sitting in the mid-30s, pushing up into the low 40s. Haven't seen it fall down into the low 30s quite yet, but we might see that in a second. There we go, we just had 32 FPS for a second.
Hey, what do you think you're doing? Get off my car!
Alright, on foot we're getting 40 FPS. Quite nice. Let's keep going. Gonna push it up to the high settings now. This is getting a bit intensive now at this point. Steam Deck isn't really designed to be playing at high and ultra settings in newer titles. Alright, this is the high settings. And let's jump into it. Man, this is gonna feel pretty laggy at this point, if I would imagine. Let's keep going. Yeah, 28 FPS. This game looks amazing. I gotta say, even on the Steam Deck, this looks amazing. I love the reflections. I love the theme. Looks super nice. This is still able to hit 38 FPS occasionally, but we are falling down into the 20s, the high 20s at least, but it is kind of lagging here and there, for sure. But FSR might be able to save us, to be honest. FSR might be able to actually save us and give us a 30 FPS playable experience at high settings even. It's sitting in the mid-30s right now. I think we're still going to fall down into the high 20s occasionally in those heavier scenes, but for the most part we should be able to hold a mid-30s experience with these kind of settings just fine. Yeah, we're sitting in the low 30s now and even hitting the high 20s, so yeah, even though we have FSR running, we still can't hold a consistent 30 with this. You will still fall down into the 20s, so I'm going to go ahead and drop the FSR quality down to balanced, and hopefully we can get a stable 30 with that. You are losing a bit of quality playing at balanced FSR, so I think ideally I would avoid playing at those high settings and just play at quality FSR or even at native. So alright, lowest I've seen it hit is around 30 FPS, so holding that 30 FPS limit quite well. Ooh, we just had a pretty big stutter there, but the game froze up. It even cut the audio out for a second. Alright, for the optimized settings that I chose for portable play, we're playing the game at 800 by 600, and FSR is set to quality with a 30 FPS cap, and these are the settings that I chose. It's a mix of medium to low. I'll go through them right now. There we go. And yeah, let's continue. So the quality you're going to be seeing is going to be pretty poor on a bigger screen, obviously. Keep that in mind that on the Steam Deck, way smaller screen, so the quality will look way better. Okay. Yeah, we're pulling around 15 watts of power, so it will give us around 2.5 hours of battery life, which is pretty fantastic. We almost doubled our battery life from what we had at just playing the game normally, I guess. Let's look for any stuttering or any lag spikes that we could have seen before with the uncapped frame rate. And so far it's running beautifully, no stuttering at all. Yep, looking pretty good. Power draw is increasing a little bit to 18 watts, so again 2 hours and 20 minutes of battery life. It just depends what you're doing pretty much. On those more intensive scenes, the Steam Deck will draw way more power compared to those lighter scenes, so just keep that in mind. But I think 2 hours of battery life is what you're going to be getting. A good way to keep the power in check is we can go ahead and enable TDP limit and set it to around 8 watts. And with an 8 watt TDP limit, let's see if we can get a stable 30 going still. Might see a couple of stutters here and there with that, but as you can see, the power draw is going to be a little bit lower now, and it won't be climbing up to 20 watts. We definitely do get a couple of stutters now with the TDP limit active, but this will give you extra battery life, so it's up to you. You could lose a bit of battery life and get a perfect 30 going, or you could, you know, have some FPS dips and a couple of stutters, but your Steam Deck will last a bit longer, so you get a bit more playtime out of it. I tried playing at 40 FPS and I just couldn't get a stable 40 going. I would drop that into the 30s, even the 20s occasionally, so 40 FPS is not ideal. You can get away with doing it, but just keep in mind that you will fall down into the 30s in those heavy scenes. Alright, so now with the optimized settings at 800p, just want to show you guys how this looks and how this plays. As you can see, power draw is going to be increasing, probably around 22 to 23 watts, which obviously is going to cut into our battery life. But the game looks far more clear and looks way better as well. And again, 30 FPS lock, not getting any stutters or any lag spikes. Okay, we just had one there, but you know, it's pretty rare. Move around a little bit more, waiting for the power draw to stabilize because it's still climbing a little bit. But I think 22 to 23 watts of power is where it's going to sit, which will give us a little bit under 2 hours of battery life. And for those of you who don't want to use FSR, you just want to run the game at native 800p with the optimized settings, this is it right here. 30 FPS. Power draw is going to be increasing quite a bit now though. Just depends what you want out of the Steam Deck. If you want the best looking game, then go ahead and disable FSR. But if you want a good balance between quality, battery life, and FPS, then go ahead and enable FSR with the optimized settings at 30 FPS. And if you just want the best battery life, then go ahead and play on the lowest settings at 800 by 600 with a 30 FPS cap and add a TDP limit of 8 watts. So as you can see, we are at 23.5 watts, but it is slightly climbing, but this might actually stick around here. So we're getting an hour and 40 minutes of battery life. So we lost around 10 minutes of battery life by just disabling FSR. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the dock performance. I'll do 1080p to start it off, and if it runs well enough, I might try it 440p and 4K maybe, but that might be too intensive. But I'll try it anyway. We'll see what we can do, and we'll continue from there. Alright, now playing the game at 1080p on the Steam Deck. Still going to be using my optimized settings. And as you can see, we're sitting in the mid to high 20s, surprisingly. I was expecting far worse from this, since we are playing basically at medium settings. But it's doing a pretty good job.
As long as the octopus-related flaws have been fixed.
Dropping down into the mid 20s. So obviously this is going to be playable. Not the most amazing experience, but it's still impressive to see it actually hit the mid 20s, even the 30s occasionally. So I'm gonna land. This game does look very good. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pause it, and I'm gonna go ahead and use FSR. Hopefully we can get some of that quality back. And I'm gonna be sticking to the quality preset. Also increase the sharpening a little bit as well. Alright. So obviously we're gonna be losing a bit of quality, as you would expect with the quality FSR, but FPS is getting pretty close to the 30s now. We're still hitting 20, or the mid 20s I guess, but definitely getting closer to it. We could go ahead and lower the settings and just play at very low settings at 1080p, but I think most people want to at least have a decent looking game while playing at 1080p. So as you can see, we are able to hold 30 FPS for the most part. but in those heavier scenes we are falling down into the mid to high 20s, so just keep that in mind. With the quality preset on FSR, it will give you a mostly 30 FPS experience with some dips into the high 20s. Can we get a stable 30 without any dips into the 20s? Let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and cap the FPS to 30 right here because I want to actually see if the game's gonna stutter at all. Okay, the game crashed, but that's alright. Let's go ahead and restart. Okay, the game crashed, so I have to restart it up real quick, but got a 30 FPS cap lock now. I just want to see if we get any stuttering or any lag spikes, or if we can get a stable 30. Oh, we just had a stutter there, I saw that.
Man, it feels good seeing the guys who escaped last year going back to the raft.
Real good. The raft's an eyesore.
Okay, not bad.
As long as
The mostly
octopus
30 FPS
related
experience
flaws
right
have been
here.
fixed.
Let's hope.
We're playing the game at 1080p,
Closing in on you.
basically medium
Be there
settings,
soon.
FSR set to balanced,
Should let Mom know
and
I'm
yeah,
late.
getting 30 FPS. I will try out 440p. This is gonna run very poorly, but I'll try it out using balanced FSR because at native it's gonna get like 5 FPS. So not even gonna try it. It might even crash. And now this right here is very risky since the GPU is recording all the power. We've got 11 watts to the GPU and only 2 watts to the CPU. So if you run into a CPU intensive scene
Headed your way.
with all the traffic and all the people,
Convoy.
or I don't
Not
know,
yet.
heaps of enemies on the
Still
screen at
securing a
once,
couple inmates.
Man,
you
it
will
feels
see a
good
massive
seeing
FPS
the
drop.
guys-
So far we're able to get 25 FPS,
As long
which is
as
pretty
the
good
octopus
surprisingly,
related
honestly.
flaws
It's
have been
not that
fixed.
bad.
Let's hope. Okay, closing in on you. Be there soon.
I'm gonna go ahead and push FSR a little bit higher to performance
Let Mom
though.
know I'll be late.
Gonna try and get a 30 FPS cap at 440p.
Hey, Mom.
4K is gonna be pretty much impossible, but we'll try it anyway.
Yeah,
Ooh, the game
but,
is
the boy
trailing a
was
little
out
bit when I
of
pan the
Copenhagen.
camera,
Gonna check a store downtown.
and FPS is not even getting 30, so
But avoid Midtown.
Hmm.
That prison convoy is making traffic a nightmare.
Oh yeah.
yeah, this is not good.
Oh, see you at dinner, Mom.
But again, I don't think anyone's expecting this thing to be able to get,
How does
you know,
Pete
30
really
FPS at
secret
440p or
identity
4K. This is not a 4K
thing?
machine.
Stresses me out.
It's a 1080p machine at most, you know? This is not that bad though. It's still definitely playable, but you are falling into the mid-20s very often. Okay, so I'm going to be trying to get a 30 FPS lock with this. So I've got dynamic resolution scaling onto 30. And see if the game can give us a 30 FPS lock, but just adjusting the settings on the fly. Ooh, the game can't do it. The game can't do it. Yeah. Alright, should we even try 4K? This is gonna... Ooh, 30 FPS, there we go. For a second we were able to get 30. This does look like ultra performance FSR though, with how much it's trailing and blurring on the fly. Okay, let's just try 4K for the fun of it, and then if it crashes, it crashes. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and disable this, and gonna use ultra performance. Please at least get 20 FPS. Alright, 4K with ultra performance FSR. This doesn't even look good, to be honest. Doesn't look like 4K. I think 1080p with balanced FSR is the way to go. It looks decently sharp still, and the game's performance is pretty good as well. Able to get 30 FPS. But this is getting 20 FPS at 4K. Ultra performance FSR. And yeah. It's honestly doing better than expected. Okay, that's it for the video, guys. If you made it this far, appreciate you. And as always, if you like what you see, then a like and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.